Hi, folks. This is Mark Smith with Family Tree Life Coaching, and I have a video today that I think is really special. Sometimes when people out there in YouTube land see a video with the title of therapy in it, they think it's sort of mundane and what else can be said about the topic of therapy. If there's a title with the word overcoming your narcissist, it seems a little sexier. But trust me, this video is one that has the potential to be very special. The title is 12 Ways Healing Magic Can Happen in Therapy. I don't know how therapy occurs with most therapists. I'm not talking about all therapists in general. There are millions of therapists out there, and I'm sure that they all have unique ways to heal and unique ways to bring magic to the process of therapy. But I'm going to share ways that have happened for me and happen in a fairly regular time period in the work that I do with my clients. Here it is, the middle of July 2020, and something is really going on out there in the world. 2 years ago, I might get 4 new referrals in a month's time, but now I'm getting 3 or 4 referrals every single day of the week, maybe a few less on the weekends. I think several things are happening. I think COVID hasn't gone away. It's going to get worse. People are feeling very stressed, very pent up. The people that jumped into, hey, COVID is over and let's party and go to bars and go to beaches, those states are now having explosive increase in people contracting COVID and a big increase in death from the coronavirus. So I think there's a lot of people in pain. And the second thing is everybody is used to talking on Zoom. I use Google Meets. A lot of people use Skype. But everybody is used to, it's normal. The new normal is to have your medical meetings, have your family meetings, have your work meetings on teleconferencing. So people are very open to that, and there's just a great deal of pain going on out there in the world. Magic doesn't happen in every therapy session. If you sign up, if you watch this and you contact me and you show up and you're like, oh boy, the magician is here and he's going to do his magical tricks and he's guaranteeing it. Magic happens when magic happens, and with me it has more to do with the client than it has to do with me. I'm always ready for magic to happen. I'm always ready for my skills and talents and abilities and the pain that I've learned and the things that I've learned through my own work to reach out and touch another human being. So here are 12 ways that I see magic happening in therapy. I'm going to give them a little drink here. These aren't in any particular order. One way that magic happens in therapy, I call it deep processing. I read a book 30 years ago by a woman named Ann Wilson Schaaf, and the book was called Beyond Science, Beyond Medicine, or maybe it was Beyond Medicine, Beyond Science. But in the book, she taught me about how emotional healing works. And that is, I might be working with a client and their eyes glaze over. That's why I can't do sessions via just the telephone. I got to see your eyes. And when I see the wounded little kid come up, I'll say, "Hey, Joe, what's coming up?" And he might start making pretty loud noises of wailing. He might just have tears trickling down his chin. He might sob. He might stuff it back. And when my clients stuff it back, I say, "Hey, let that go ahead and come on. It's wanting to come on." So they'll cry, and then about 3 minutes later, they stop and they breathe. And I say, "Let's stay with this." About a minute later, another wave comes, and they cry for another 3 minutes. And then they're done for a minute, and then they cry for another 5 minutes, and then they're done for a minute, and then they cry for 10 minutes, and it goes on the whole session. It's very exhausting. You'll need a nap after this. I was working with a woman last week, and this magical moment, life-changing moment of deep cleansing and healing happened to her. She said she went and laid down and cried for 4 more hours. This is not depression. This is courage. This is people who are pouring their heart out very deeply. This is not weakness. This is strength. So one way that I see magic happening in therapy is if somebody has a deep processing experience and they cry for 20 minutes, they cry for the whole hour, they cry. I've had times in my own life where I'm struggling and I'll cry for 5 minutes, and it changes my body chemistry, and I have this tremendous sense of relief and release and well-being that comes over me with just a 5-minute cry. But when I have the honor of sitting with somebody who cries for the whole therapy hour, I feel like I'm a doctor delivering a baby. They're doing the work. I'm just there to make it safe. They're the one delivering the baby. The best therapy session I ever had, one time I arrived at my therapist's office. I took my shoes off. I laid down on the couch. I wept for an hour. All she did was hand me tissues and told me to breathe. I wrote her a check. This is back when people wrote checks. Rescheduled an appointment and left. And when I left, the grass was greener, the sky was bluer, the air was fresher. Second way that I see magic happening in therapy sessions is when an expert in family systems, an expert in family trees, has the opportunity to do an intensive study of your family tree. We're going to find something. We're going to find something that you didn't know about, and will blow your minds. Most of the people that I work with, if they're a couple, they come in, I tell them, y'all are smart people, you've read a lot of books, you've spent your whole life developing your paradigm, but I think you've only got your jigsaw puzzle about 40% put together. And I show them their family tree, and I said, when I'm done in 3 sessions studying you and asking these questions and putting it on the family tree, I will have 85% of your jigsaw puzzle of your life put together. And I'm just going to flip it around and go, boo. Let me tell you the truth about who you are and where you came from. Some examples of this that sometimes are really stunning is sometimes I'll find some form of emotional cutoff that happens as far back as great-grandparents. Maybe there was a suicide, a grandparent committed suicide. Maybe a grandparent died in childbirth. Maybe both grandparents were wiped out, great-grandparents were wiped out by the flu epidemic of 1918. My great-grandfather was killed in the flu epidemic of 1819, and my grandmother and her siblings ended up in an orphanage, and her mother was in a mental institution. But if that man wouldn't have died, the course of my life would have been completely different, because the course of my grandmother's life, she would have been a lot more emotionally healthier. Many times, the most important thing that ever happened to you in your life happened 2 generations before you were born. So what happens when there's an abandonment from a great-grandparent and a grandparent? That grandparent is on a mission for what? Closeness in the family. It's because they were abandoned at birth or very soon after birth. So they create an overly enmeshed family system where nobody gets to leave and nobody gets to think differently, and there's no boundaries. Parents are enmeshed to children, and then the next generation is enmeshed, and that's the generation that I'm working with. And when you grow up enmeshed, oddly enough, what happens is you'll marry somebody who ends up having affairs and cheating on you, and it will feel as if you've been abandoned. When you've been enmeshed and too close in a family and not allowed to have your own individuality, you've been abandoned. It just doesn't feel like abandonment. It feels sort of warm and fuzzy and like, love. And that's what it is. It's too much love to where it's not healthy love. Another thing I notice in family systems is many times the oldest child with 2 incompetent, under-functioning parents, they have to grow up and become a parent by the time they're 8, 9, 10 years old, and they stay in the role of overfunctioner the rest of their life. Who does an overfunctioner marry? They always fall in love with and marry an underfunctioner. Many times it's the youngest in the family, and they've had everything done for them, and they don't know how to do things for themselves. So overfunctioners become that way because their parents aren't very competent. My parents weren't very competent, and I'm the second oldest of 7 children. So I became a parent to one of my siblings, and I became a workaholic, in the future, and somebody who cares for therapy clients. I became an overfunctioner because my parents were so incompetent and broken. So when I point that out, that it's not your husband's fault that he's a little parent, big kid, that he's an underfunctioner, a ball dropper, an addict, and I will go through a particular overfunctioner's entire relationship history, and I will point out that there's patterns where this type of overfunctioning has been going on their entire life. There's family roles. One is being the family hero, the overfunctioner. One is being a lost child. And I can study your family tree and point out when somebody grows up with very few friends, they like to read books, they're just lost in the shuffle. And then they grow up and they feel invisible and lost in their lives. One of the patterns that I notice is almost everybody who you'll marry you'll marry a disguised version of the person who hurt you the most. And I tell people, if you'll come in and tell me the truth about your parents, I will prove to you that you married a disguised version of whichever parent who hurt you the most, or maybe it's a combination of the two parents. However, probably with about 5 to 7% of people, they don't do that. They don't marry a hidden version of the parent who hurt you the most. What they marry is what I call the anti-type. The anti-type, like in my case, my mother was mean, reactive, catastrophizing, abandoning, know-it-all, controlling, raging. So instinctively, I married the nicest, kindest, sweetest, most other-centered, codependent, prettiest woman who would have me. The danger or the downside to marrying somebody who's your anti-type is you tend to run out of chemistry in midlife. And then somebody comes along who's a fiery version of your type, and there could be problems. But if you get a chance to, as a young person, fall in love and marry somebody who's your type, you're blessed. And I was very blessed for 27 years and have 3 amazing children from that marriage. So if you have an expert in collecting information for your family tree who can then tell you what patterns are there, that's priceless. If you're going to a therapist who doesn't focus on your family of origin, you're wasting your time. That's not even therapy. Therapy is healing the wounds of your childhood, my friends. That's what therapy is. And the best thing that you can do to begin your therapy is to spend 3 or 4 sessions with an expert who knows how to decipher your family history. Put it on a genogram or a family tree, interpret it, and get that information into you and your spouse. It'll change everything. It's magical. The third thing that I see happening in therapy that's magic is I call it, whenever there's a paradigm shift, I can see it in people's eyes. When people are getting what I'm sharing, I can see it in their eyes. They're just like, I feel you, brother. You know, the words are going into their ears and into their hearts, and it's resonating as truth. And even if I'm saying things that are difficult to hear, I did a feedback session this week, and the couple just totally got it. And another form of magic is, I call it shooting Bambi. When I do these feedback sessions, I have to tell the truth about what I see. I have to tell you the truth about the truth you told me about your family, about your parents. And sometimes I don't want to tell the truth because there's this innocent little kid person who's in denial, and they think mom and daddy are still, you know, extra special peachy keen. And I got to tell them what your parents did there was weird. Or your parents are freaky about money. Or that was abusive. And that adult who had solid defense mechanisms as a child, that's news to them. And they're like, you know, and I'm like, bam, shoot Bambi. I don't take any joy in shooting Bambi, but it's my job as a therapist to tell people the truth. I tell people who come to my office, which aren't too many people these days, I see them online, But I used to tell them, you're either going to learn something from me studying your family tree and teaching you things, or I'm going to chase you out of my building. And I really don't care which one it is. I'd prefer to not chase you out of my building. If I chased all my clients out of my building, it'd probably be bad for business, but good therapy is about truth. Find a therapist who has the balls to tell you the truth. Find a therapist who has the wisdom to know the truth after they've studied your family tree, who can see how your great-grandparents impacted your grandparents, impacted your parents, impacted you, which impacted who you married and why you married them. Priceless information, people. Another way that magic happens in therapy is many times I'll read a poem. Some of my favorite poets are Rumi, from centuries ago, or there's a current therapist, he is really a therapist of words, a poet named David Whyte, Whyte, who's brilliant. Many times I'll read his poem Sweet Darkness. I read this past week, there was a woman who needed to know about passion and who she was and where she came from and what that looks like. And I read that poem and it was like, pow, pow, magic. Only about 2 or 3 times a year when I'm working with somebody, I'll get shivers run up and down my neck and spine, because I'll be saying something that's so true that shoots through my mouth and into their ears like a bolt of lightning. And it's stunning for everybody in the room. It only happens about twice a year where I get the shivers. I'm actually getting the shivers right now when I'm talking about this. It's very special when that happens, but sometimes it happens. Sometimes I'm a spiritual person, and I do believe that I'm called by God to do this work. You can call it a higher power, you can call it the universe, but the universe has put me through a lot so that I could become a wise man, somebody who can help people immensely. I have a gift. It's a hard-earned gift, let me tell you. And sometimes when I'm talking with somebody and I have a sense that God led them my way, I'll actually say, a little bit in jest and a little bit in truth, my friend, put "Thus saith the Lord" after this, what I'm about ready to tell you. I'm not the Lord, far from it. I'm broken goofball is what I am. But sometimes I feel the presence of God flowing through me and saying things. I've got this one client, he's actually a minister, and he's really deep. He's a live wire, and he's really raw. And every time we meet, something magic happens. And it's God moving through me and through him because of him. Because I might have a session right after that where the client isn't raw and they're not ready to work, and I got nothing. No magic happens. It's not my job to make magic happen in the session. It's your job to show up ready to work. And there's a pretty good chance magic will happen if you show up raw and vulnerable and looking for some answers, which brings me to the next thing that happens magically. I tell people that I'm like the ignition to a car. I can be tired. I could be on my 10th hour of therapy, which sometimes I am late at night with all these referrals. And I'm hungry and I'm ready to go to bed. I'm ready to go watch Netflix and binge on Netflix and eat a pizza and some ice cream. But if you bring one of three things, magic will happen. The three things are: bring me your pain, bring me really good questions, and then for just a small portion of my clients who aren't quite ready, if they come and they're really full of shit, that will fire me up too if they're really in denial. There's a verse in the Bible that says, "Do not strongly rebuke a mocker, lest they hate you." But that's the job of a therapist, is not to rebuke a mocker, just tell them the truth. Hold up a mirror and say, dude, that thing that you're blaming on your wife, that isn't about your wife. That's about your childhood, my friend. Go look in the mirror. You'll find every answer to your problems in your life. You're not going to find them in a marriage counseling room where your wife's going to take the blame. You're going to find the answer to your problems in a mirror. All the growth that I've made as a man and as a husband have been me examining myself, not me examining my partner. Another way that magic happens in therapy is when the little kid comes out in one of the clients and they start to weep, and I can see the little kid, and I tell the partner, do you see what I see? Look at their eyes. And I said, do you see the little kid? And they go, yeah. I remember one time a man came in and he was very uncomfortable with therapy. And I said, what's your problem? He says, my wife's mean. I said, tell me about your first marriage. He said, she was mean. I said, tell me about your second marriage. He said, she was mean. I said, okay, let's get your family tree out and let's do some investigation here. Find out why you keep picking these mean wives all the time. It didn't have to be his mother. It could have been his father, but in this case it was his mother. For some reason, this man's mother just hated him. And rather than live at home before the internet, he found a military school to get placed in where he could go to high school. You know your mom is mean if military school's the easy route. So one day we were talking about his mother, and it was so beautiful. A big fat tear, probably the fattest tear I've seen in my career. It was a big old tear. Started rolling down this man's face. And mean wife number 3, she reached over and wiped it off. It was so beautiful and tender and touching. That's why he was picking the mean wives, so that he could actually get some love from one of them. And just then, when he showed that wounded little boy, magic happened. It was deeply cool. Something that happens that's beautiful and magical. Sometimes somebody is shaming themselves, and what tends to happen is I get a really gentle voice, and I'm talking to the little kid, and I lift shame off of them, and I say, that wasn't your fault. That wasn't your fault. We all remember the great scene with Matt Damon and Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting, where he says, it wasn't your fault. Yeah, I know. No, it wasn't your fault. And then he held him and he cried. That's magic. It doesn't normally happen that dramatically when you're Robin Williams and Matt Damon and the client is such a tough nut to crack. But it's beautiful to lift shame off of another human being. Another thing that happens is somebody comes into a dream session with a dream, and I spent a year in therapy with a Jungian therapist. The entire therapy was your dreams. I would have probably about 8 dreams that I'd had that week. I was quite the dreamer, and I wrote them down in great detail. He went through and asked me, what does this mean to you? What does that mean to you? And he would interpret my dreams. And it was some of the most powerful therapy that I'd ever had, because it's a window into the unconscious. So I encourage my clients, especially after their feedback session, to write down their dreams and bring them in, because I will be able to help you understand them and tell you what your unconscious is trying to tell you. Powerful, magical stuff. The last thing that comes to mind as magic that happens in therapy, I have this policy that when I'm working with somebody, sometimes I'll see a picture in my head, and no matter what I see, I tell them what I see. You know, it could be something as simple as I see 2 people drowning, and neither of them can swim over and save the other person because you're both drowning. No matter what I see in my head, I think it's significant, and I always say it. One time there was a fellow who, his wife wasn't in love with him anymore and she was leaving him, but he still had desire for her. And I share what I see. I had him show him up at her front door, knocking on the door, and he was buck naked with a big erection. I didn't want to share that. That's a weird thing for me to see, but it was about the therapy. It wasn't about me, and they both about fell on the floor laughing, but they also knew that it was something that was true about their relationship. So, listen, if you have some resources, I'm expensive. My fee just went up to $200 for a 50, 60-minute session. I know it's a lot of money, but I know people that charge a lot more than that. But if you're stuck in your recovery process and you want to figure out who you are and where you came from, and you're willing to invest in yourself, give me a call, or better yet, just text me, 317-507-8866, or you can email me at marksmith@familytreecounseling.com, 317-507-8866. I'm more of a texter. I talk with people so much all week long, I don't really like talking on the phone. But there's an old saying, you don't have to advertise a fire, people will come running. And it's a really a joy to be a conduit of the universe's healing power to help people know who they are, know where they come from, and get busy fixing themselves. If you haven't joined our channel, Mark Smith Family Tree Life Coaching, please subscribe. And then you'll find out when I make a new video. And if you want to find some magic and some insight and some life-changing healing, throw me a text. Thank you for watching today. God bless.